Hello and welcome to another episode of the podcast, The Pocket Stylist. I'm Lisa Talbot and we are kicking off this episode and 2025 with the first of our style dilemmas. And I am thrilled to introduce you to Lucy Trewhitt, who I met actually through Albright, the lovely townhouse and networking for business women that is in central London. But I met Lucy online. So Lucy is joining me today. Lucy, first of all, hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm great actually. I've had a really nice Christmas and it's just feels nice to just get back into the swing of things.
It does, doesn't it? Do you know what I love? I've loved being off, but you kind of miss doing. Well, I do. So I'm a bit like, what can I do next? So thank you so much for coming on and kind of doing the first of the style dilemmas. Tell everybody first of all a little bit about, who you are, where you're based, and we can just go from there.
Sure. So I am in my, I guess, mid to late 30s now. I'm 36, so I'm kind of clinging to the mid 30s. But realistically, we're getting closer to 40. I am a business owner, marketing strategist, and background-wise, I live in Edinburgh, but I spent many years in London, which is how I guess I knew about the Albright and how we ended up meeting.
Yep.
I lived in Paris for a little while. Background is marketing, fashion. But yes, I've been working for myself for probably about 5, almost 6 years now. So since just pre-pandemic.
Okay. And this is where, when we were talking, wasn't it? This is where
Mhm.
it came up because you said about the pandemic, etc. So what was and what is your kind of style query and style dilemma that you had? And then we'll chat more and more and more.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, and it's probably something that lots of people have had, right? Where you kind of go into COVID and everyone's in lockdown, and then you get really used to being in your leggings, like really comfortable, sweaty Betty, the everyday ones that you just kind of want to like live in forever.
Yeah.
Um, and I think also before that I was obviously working for a fashion company, really loved fashion, and but I left that and I kind of with that lost a little bit of my joy of clothing. Like I used to love like going into my wardrobe, playing in it and getting dressed, like creating outfits. That was kind of my jam. Even though I worked in marketing, not in any form of
Yeah,
styling.
yeah, yeah.
And I just sort of got to that point during COVID where I was like, black leggings, black zip up top, like not no form of creativity whatsoever. And I just lost all excitement about it. And then obviously it's COVID, so you're not really doing much, you're not moving much, you maybe gain a bit of weight. And you kind of think, or your body changes. And I've sort of obviously then work for myself. So I spend a lot of my time working from home. I have a dog. I don't really get dressed to work from home in terms of
Mm.
like, I'm not gonna get dressed up. I'll get dog hair all over my clothes. Because I don't know if anyone else owns a Dalmatian, but you can brush them as much as you want. That white hair is going to stick to you. So yeah, I think you kind of realized a couple of years in, actually, that's really impacted my confidence.
Hmm.
That getting dressed, not kind of, and it's also during that time frame, your body changes, you age, things that you would wear in your late 20s or very early 30s, you wouldn't necessarily wear when you're 35, 36, right?
Yeah. And do you know what's
Or
really interesting? Because the listeners will be sitting there thinking, well, or some might, the pandemic was potentially 4 years ago, right?
yeah,
And that sounds really, but that sounds amazing when you say it like that, doesn't it? But it's really interesting the knock-on effect that it has had and is still having. And I think that's where, some ladies will say, oh, yeah, but, the pandemic was a long time ago. But actually, the impact it had from a clothing perspective has really kind of made a difference because not only did, like exactly like you said, many of us spent many a month in elasticated waists because they were comfortable and like you said, we were working from home and whatever. But then also, then the business, if you work for yourself, you then had to go back out to potentially meet clients or you were networking, etc. And the dilemma came of, well, what do I wear now? But
yeah,
for those ladies that work for somebody else in a corporate or a small business, it was then like, well, what do I do? What do I wear going back to work? Because the landscape of the whole business world changed. Whereas, businesses were a little bit more formal, they relaxed their dress code. For those women that were only going in 2 to 3 days a week, it was, the businesses just wanted their employees back in the office. They wanted to, welcome them with open arms and build that kind of community again in their offices. So it was really interesting. I saw that an awful lot, but it is still having a knock-on effect. And you are so right that it affected more women's confidence because they just didn't feel, well, the word confident, they just didn't feel confident getting dressed and going to their place of work or businesses or networking as well.
Yeah, and I think it's also just like, I don't know, it's finding that joy in clothing again. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't until I started kind of shopping in my wardrobe again. I was saying to you earlier, I wore like a really nice, like vintage A-line Burberry skirt the other day, and I was like, oh, this is so exciting. Like, I can't believe I found this in my wardrobe. Um, Completely forgotten about it, which is really quite sad because I used to love stuff like that. And it was only when I started doing that that I actually realized the impact it had had on my confidence and my sort of quality of life as well, because I do get or did get a lot of joy from like I would just go and sit in my wardrobe and like put some music on, maybe have a glass of wine and like plan my outfits, which
Mm.
sounds mad for some people I know, and they're like, who has time to do that? And I get it, but I used to love doing that.
I think you've picked up on two things there. So, from my perspective, you've picked up on the fact that your wardrobe should bring you joy, right? Because your
Yeah.
wardrobe and the clothing that you have in your wardrobe either has an ability of making you feel incredibly good, right? Or it can make you feel incredibly rubbish.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If something doesn't fit, or if you don't like the style of it, or it's too tight, or it's clinging, or you don't like the length of the trousers, or anything like that, it can make you feel rubbish. We all know if we put on something that we love, and this is where so many ladies wear that 20% of their wardrobe 80% of the time because they constantly
Mm.
wear the things that they like because it's comfortable, they like the color, blah, blah, blah. And that's where sometimes we forget about what's in our wardrobe because we just gravitate to those that make us feel comfortable. But you also then picked up on the fact of not only does it have a way of making you feel bad and feel good, ladies sometimes don't have time, right, to look at their wardrobe because they might be ambitious business owners, they might be high level industry professionals, so they don't have this time. But actually, just glancing your head through a wardrobe, you can sometimes, if you can plan an outfit, it makes such a difference. And that's where like my online wardrobe platform works so well because we've got outfit preparation and it's already done. So did you find that obviously as the years have gone by, because obviously you've got 4 years since we spoke, since the
Yeah.
pandemic, do you feel that you went back into your wardrobe, like you said, and started looking at things? I think it'd be interesting for the listeners. How did you yourself kind of, I know it sounds awful, but give yourself a bit of a kick to say, right, come on, let's grasp this by the ball by the horns, as they say, because it's lovely. I can tell people, but I think it's lovely for them to hear how you did it as well.
Yeah, I think for me, actually, initially, there was a sort of a two-factor thing going on. So one, I run my own business and I work in marketing. So I understand that it's a brand positioning issue for me personally, maybe
Yep,
not for
yep,
everybody, but it's very much like if I'm going to meet a client and I don't feel great or look like the part, as it were, that's problematic, right?
yep.
Because they get that impression of me
Yeah.
from my
Lucy,
clothing.
for some of the listeners who might not be in that, they might have heard
Yeah.
brand positioning, just explain it. Just explain what brand positioning kind of is, because it
So,
could be
yeah.
personal brand as well as somebody who owns a business, right?
Absolutely. It could be, you could be working for a business and it's just what people's impression of it's essentially an overall impression,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So if you're a business, it's the difference. Some people go, well, why is that business selling out? When actually it's probably not their copy, it's probably not anything else. It is probably just that their overall brand positioning is they've nailed it. They've got it pitched right exactly to their clients.
Yep.
So it's that sort of overall impression that you leave behind.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be the way you're speaking to someone or how interested you are in somebody, but obviously the most obvious one is a visual one. It's the first one they get before you open your mouth. So that's really important from where I'm sitting. Sorry, I'm covering my nails because my nail lady isn't at work yet and they're terrible. And it's yeah, sorry. And I talk with my hands, so it's very difficult. But yes, so that was kind of an element for me. I was like, well, what do I dress? Because it needs to be something I can wear at home on a Zoom call, but it also needs to be something I can go if I'm having a meeting.
Yeah.
And they're very different things. What translates in person doesn't necessarily translate on a Zoom call, vice versa. Um, so there was that element. And then there was also, well, so that it was a need really for me
Yes.
from
A need. Okay. Yep.
and then there was an element of, well, I sort of got my confidence back a little bit. So in terms of body having changed because I'm 5 years older or whatever, it was sort of, well, I took up running again. And then obviously with that, and it's really shallow and it's, but with that, your body sort of changes back a little bit
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
lose weight.
Yeah.
So
It's a little bit of self-care though as well in there too,
yeah,
isn't
it's a little bit of self-care. And but I think getting dressed is self-care, right?
it?
Like I
Mm-hmm.
think that is real. So there was a little bit of that happening. And then with that, I was like, oh, actually, now I can wear that item that I maybe couldn't quite squeeze into, or maybe it wasn't as comfortable 6 months ago. So I think it's just sort of got me a little bit excited about things that were already in my wardrobe. And then I thought, oh, actually, how do we play with this?
Yeah.
How do we get this back?
Mm.
Because I remembered that it used to sort of really light me up.
Mm. Do you think that when you've kind of done that for you, do you feel that your style has changed? Because this is some of the questions that I get, and obviously some of the clients I see, they say, "Oh, do you know what? Life has just been this tumbleweed, right? And it's kept going and it's kept going, very much like we're all so busy." And they say to me, "I've kind of lost a little bit of who I am." And sometimes you need to refine who you are, right? And that you might have changed a little bit as you've gone through life. You might have lost a little bit of confidence, but you might have also gained confidence because of the role that you do or the business that you have. But then also you have that ability, I think, sometimes to we are very critical of ourselves. So sometimes we also morph into the role that we do, which is really interesting. And I see so many ladies who work for other businesses who feel they need to dress a certain way, right, to complement the business. And then they get lost a little bit. So that was the reason for my question. Do you feel that you kind of have not lost, did you kind of change a little bit of your personality as you came out? Did you feel like you'd almost lost yourself during COVID and then you came out going, oh my gosh, yeah, I used to love that cut, love that color, love that styling, and I'm going to re-inject it back in?
Yeah, I think yes and no. Like I do feel like I did lose a chunk of my identity.
Mhm.
Um, but in terms of I used to love just more that I just used to really not about specific items of clothing and then rediscovering it. I've consistently always loved beige, and that sounds
Yeah, yeah,
really boring, I know.
yeah.
But like I remember even at uni, we're going back sort of 15 years. I have a friend who was like came and like she was looking through my clothes for something for a night out or whatever it was. I mean, we're going back a long time. And she was like, everything in your wardrobe is a variation on brown or beige. And I was like, yes, yes, it is. And it's to be fair, I would say 50% of my wardrobe is still beige.
Mhm.
It's just really versatile for me. Like I
It's a
find it,
base, it's called a base neutral. So it's a base neutral because it goes with everything. Very
yeah,
much like black, very much like navy. You know, if we look at the base neutral tones, there's navy, black, grey, beige.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
it. Because they all go with everything. They complement everything, which is brilliant. And also your colouring. So for ladies that are listening rather than watching this on YouTube, you are petite, aren't you? You're 5'2".
5'1".
Oh, sorry, I gave you an
Yeah,
extra inch
really
there,
small.
Lucy.
I know, I'll
Um,
take it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you're blonde. So your colouring really does suit those undertones as well. Um, so did you
Black sometimes is quite heavy on me, I
too
find.
dark? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's too deep for you. So did you find once you then obviously thought, right, I'm going to go back in my wardrobe and I'm going to start playing again. Did you find as well then that you started looking at maybe different brands as well? Did you get that love back of shopping because you almost looked in your wardrobe and thought, I'm missing a few bits now to keep me modern?
100%.
Mm.
100%. And I really wasn't shopping through the pandemic. Like I wasn't, or I was,
Some
but
people did, some people just didn't.
it was like activewear or gym stuff or
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
loungewear essentially, which is great, but it has a place.
yeah,
What was it Karl Lagerfeld said about tracksuits? I mean, so he said something about when you start wearing a tracksuit, you may as well, you've given up or something. He said something about that, which I still don't actually own a tracksuit, but had he said that about leggings, I would have been in trouble. Um, but yeah, in terms of the shopping element, I've changed the way I've shopped.
oh, that's
Before, I
interesting.
was really just like excited by something and impulsive. Like
Yeah,
I'd really be like, I need this, and this is exciting. I want this, or oh, and this and this and this. And I didn't care so much about where the item had come from, what the item's heritage was. And that's not to say I was going out and buying like super fast fashion because I've never, I'm quite, what's the word? There's a word for it when you're really sensitive, not sensitive skin, but like I'm really weird about materials. Like I
yeah,
don't, if
yeah,
I don't feel of a material, it like makes me kind of shudder a bit. Like I
yeah, yeah.
really particular about the fabric. But for example, like, I know certain businesses, having worked in fashion, I know certain businesses like they'll charge you thousands and thousands of pounds for a handbag, but actually the cost price of that bag is maybe £300 max.
Yeah.
And I know that that bag they're saying is made in France actually was made in China, finished in France, but then that brand, that specific luxury brand's audience is mainly in China. So then it's shipped back to China for that, which is like
Weird.
wild
Yeah, yeah.
and also really terrible for the environment, the planet, everything else. So I've kind of I'm a lot wiser to that stuff now. And I think I'm older and I kind of care more. And I think the cut of certain things matters more. So, like, I'm less likely to go into Zara and I'm more likely to go, well, if I'm spending 60 quid in Zara, why don't I go on Vestiaire or like the Real Real and get something that's secondhand but still has tags on that's but like twice the quality for the same price?
Yeah. And I think so many more women are doing that
Yeah.
100% because pre-loved is huge. Everybody
Yeah.
knows about vintage, right? Everybody knows about vintage. Not everyone knows about Vestiaire. So Vestiaire
Oh,
is
let's keep that a secret.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. So Vestiaire for the listeners is another pre-love site, but it's all designer branded. It is beautiful. Burberry's, the Gucci's, isn't it? They're all on there. So you're absolutely right because I actually have one client who only shops Vestiaire, doesn't shop anywhere else. She only
Yeah.
shops Vestiaire, but her wardrobe.
Financially, it makes sense because a lot of those pieces hold their value as well.
Massively. Her wardrobe is beautiful, Prada, Gucci, self-portrait. It's just beautiful. But again, like she said, I haven't paid full price. I've got this wonderful, beautiful garments. So we can do it. You can do it. But I think it's it's getting to that stage. Do you know what I mean? It's because
Yeah.
some ladies are still in that, how do I do it? And from my perspective, it's very much like you did, right? You almost pressed a bit of a pause button, but you sat and you gave yourself permission to look back through your wardrobe, which is where it initially came, but you
But
looked
it's
into it.
scary doing that
Yeah,
sometimes because
massively.
you're like, oh, that doesn't fit, or oh,
That's
I
it.
used to love that, and now I have to get rid of it.
Yeah, and then lots of ladies go, oh yeah, but I paid quite a bit of money for that, and I can't feel of moving it out. But I always say, if you have an item in your wardrobe that you don't love, it's creating a negative space in your head. So
Yeah.
take it out. You don't have to sell it. You don't have to give it to charity. Just remove it from your wardrobe, put it under a bed, do anything with it, but see how much you miss it, and you're guaranteed that you won't miss it. But then what you start to build is that wardrobe that there's only things in there that you want to wear, and that's goes back to the joy that you said earlier. And I think this then like you said, then from a shopping perspective, you then looked at, what do you need? Where can you get it from? Can you invest in those key pieces? And that's a good way to do it, because then you're starting to build on, as we said earlier, your personal brand, your brand positioning, because all of us have our own brand. We do. It's like you said, it's who we are. It's the message we leave in a room when we walk out. Somebody will remember us for something, and inevitably, if I said to you, or someone said to me, here, where you were out Christmas Eve, what was the one thing you might remember? I might say, I saw a lovely lady in the supermarket. She had the most amazing coat on.
Yeah.
Because that's what catches the eye. It wasn't the shopping trolley she was pushing. Could have been her hair, could have been her jacket, could have been anything. And that's where you have to feel super, super confident with your clothing.
You're absolutely right. My stepmother went on holiday to the Maldives this year. And when she got back, the first thing she said to me was not how wonderful the holiday was. It was, I saw this woman in the airport on the way home, and she had this bag, and it was sort of reflective, and it had these sort of geometric print pattern on it, and it was made of almost like a plastic or a metal. What brand is it? And she was like, it just really looked great on her. Like it was good, it was casual, but it just really like, and I was like, well, it's an Issey Miyake one, but I mean,
Yeah.
it was just
But
that
you'll
was that
always, yeah,
comment with how
exactly.
great that woman looked with that particular bag and how she wanted that thing,
Yeah.
not
And you'll
actually had a
always,
wonderful time on holiday.
no, exactly. And you'll always remember somebody for the right reason. And then this links in for some of the listeners who run their own business, because this then links into brand photography and brand imagery. Because again, the first thing somebody will see when they're scrolling through someone's website or they've dropped onto their Instagram is potentially them. So it's
Yeah,
about then going, hang on a minute, how am I portraying myself through my clothing? And there are some amazing brand photographers out there, and a lot that I work with. But the majority of them who come to me say, Lisa, I've got a client, she's got a brand shoot, she doesn't know what to wear. And and
yeah.
and, and that's where I come in, from that perspective. But I always say, what you wear is not just about the clothes you put on your back, it's how they feel, it's how you are seen. There is so much more to
I
clothing.
guess I guess that even if you don't have your own business, even if you're just, lots of businesses will do this because they want you to have a LinkedIn headshot, right? So they'll do like
Yeah,
they'll have like a photography day essentially, where like you go in and you get your LinkedIn headshot, and they hire a photographer for the day, where it's obviously the background's boring and it's the same for everybody. But how you feel going into that situation is going to impact the end result, which is going to go on your LinkedIn profile, which I guess isn't just going to influence your current employer, but it's going to influence, potential future employers. Or actually, do you want to go and do this speaking event and elevate your profile? All of those things it can impact.
absolutely. And it's also how other people see you. Because also, if you are someone who presents, whether it be at your board meeting every month, or whether it's you go to, I don't know, whether you're part of an exhibition team, it's about being confident. Can I
Mm.
ask where you are? Because obviously you've kind of done this on your own with
Yeah.
getting to that point. Where are you now with your wardrobe? Because I'm sure the listeners are sitting there thinking, well, what does her wardrobe look like now? How do you feel now? Because obviously you started with the kind of dilemma of how you almost, rotated into the leggings during COVID. Then we
Yeah.
spoke about how you pressed the pause button and went back through your wardrobe and started to fall back in love with your own wardrobe, and then you changed your shopping habits. That was that's obviously happened over time. Where are you now with it? Because we're obviously 4 years down the line from the original COVID. Because it's lovely for
Yeah.
ladies to see how you've got to where you've got to.
Yeah, I guess now I feel like it's a work in progress, as everything is. So I still feel like there are elements where I'm like, oh, I'm not quite ready for that yet, or I don't, that feels like it's a bit too much, or even things like with the sort of the curation of a wardrobe as well. I'm like, well, what, I still haven't found a really good basic white t-shirt that I like that suits me. And it like I've kind of got to that point where I'm like, I know there are gaps,
Yeah, yeah.
see them. And once you see them, you're like, okay, well, I could just rush off to Zara and buy something, and then it would last like maybe a couple of washes or maybe a season if I'm really lucky. But it's kind of like I'd actually rather be really intentional. And I think that is something that's sort of threaded through my whole life, is that sort of let's be intentional about this, because I'm really intentional with my business. I'm really intentional with my clients and my marketing and the way that I do things rather than just throwing the kitchen sink at it. And I think that's very much changed as me as a person. I used to just be throw everything at it, throw the kitchen sink at it. But that strategy doesn't work, and it just leaves you really exhausted with literally everything. And so I think there's an element of I'm trying to be really intentional, which I guess means it's taking time.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that's really interesting because it's the intentional and time are two very good words. So
Mm,
for like my clients, like you said, it's about saying, first of all, it's about recognizing that you actually would love some help with it from that perspective, from my perspective, because it's the intention. It's like, right, okay, I've got this coming up this year, or I'd like to be doing this year. I know that, I've kind of got myself stuck a little bit. It's never about the new year is always an interesting one, isn't it? Because you
mm,
hear this whole new year, new you, and that's just a load of rubbish. It's not. We don't want to get to every new year and think, God, we need to reinvent ourselves. It's sometimes just pressing that pause button and going, okay, what do I need to do this year? What do I want to do? What business aspirations have I got? What employment aspirations have I got? And how do I get to that? So I think New Year is sometimes about time to just to reflect. And like very much like you did after the pandemic. And it's about saying, right, where am I now and where do I want to get to? And how do I get there? And initially, like we said, it's about pressing that pause button and just allocating yourself time, even if it's 15 minutes, right? To go, just open those wardrobe doors and go, what have I got in here? Because I guarantee you now, more ladies don't actually do that. And when they do, they go, oh my gosh, there's that dress that I don't actually like. Those trousers don't fit me properly. I love that jacket. That top's brilliant. That top's brilliant. I don't really like those shoes. They're really uncomfortable if I get the train. It's about doing that. And
yeah.
once you kind of almost pull out the pieces that your gut tells you you don't like, because we all have this gut reaction of, oh, I don't really like that, you can then kind of start again. And when we say start again, we don't mean you have to pull everything out and rebuild a wardrobe, but you can just incrementally add in the pieces, like you said, whether it be via a pre-love saw, whether it, ladies love the high street, you can go and do that too. It's about adding in the pieces to start to build to where you want to get to. And I think that's where you start moving that stuck bit. You've got to kind of, it's a bit like a jam jar lid, isn't it? Sometimes it's really hard to get going, but once you click it first, you've opened it, and then you can start to turn it gradually. I always say, don't try and do this in one hit. Baby steps, and you'll start to get there as well, which really, really helps.
I think as well, like just going back to the basics of
Mhm.
like and the basics for me are maybe different to what the basics were for other people. So it's like I was like trying to buy jeans, and I'm like, I've never in my life bought a pair of jeans. I was once told by a model who that when she buys jeans, she only ever thrifts them. And she goes into like thrift stores or like charity shops and she looks in the men's section because they fit better,
Yeah,
because they're a sturdier fabric. So they're like the proper denim. And she'll get like old Levi's for like a fraction of the price or something like that. And then go get them altered. If you want to, go get them tailored. Because then you get basically a phenomenal pair of jeans for about 30 quid by the time you've bought them and had them altered somewhere, which is, and they last so much longer. And the denim's already stretched. So
yeah.
you don't have denim when you buy like that really stiff, rigid denim,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's too tight for like a week. And then after that, you're like, but now it's too big.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
that
So,
stuff like that, that you're like,
yeah,
"Ah, yeah, why am I
absolutely.
trying to do something that I would never have done before? Let me take it back to doing something that I would always have done previous, like always would have done beforehand."
Yeah. Well, do you know, I think it's been a great conversation we've had because it's been a lovely bit about your journey, what you struggled with, and how you've kind of got to where you are now with it. And although it's a work in progress, I think that's lovely for ladies to hear because, you don't have to kind of go at it and get it done. It's a work in progress, and that's one of the most beautiful pieces. I have thoroughly enjoyed having you on my podcast. Absolutely. But if obviously from a marketing perspective, I know you have your own business, just tell everybody where they can find you from your business perspective.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you can find me on Instagram. It's Ibali, Ibali, digital marketing. I think there's an underscore in between those words. And I'm on LinkedIn, Lucy Trewhitt, and my website, which is ibali.co.uk. So if you needed marketing support, whether it's a personal brand issue or whether it's a sort of a bigger business, then yeah, happy to help.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for coming on and doing the first Style Dilemma. Hopefully we've showcased what can be done, but also we've also highlighted sometimes, where ladies feel they are. And I think it
Yeah.
always really, really helps that ladies can listen and think, I'm not on my own here, because some ladies think, oh, I can't still be stuck after 4 years, but actually 100% you can
Yeah.
is then making, like you said, those little adjustments to kind of move forward. And I think a new year is a good time to kind of do that, but
Yeah.
little tiny baby steps I would recommend.
But it has literally only been the last sort of 4 months that I've been doing that. So, as you said, it can take a while for
Yeah,
you to
yeah.
kind of go, wait a second.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not to put the pressure on yourself.
No.
If you suddenly think, oh, I need to do this, it's not. It's it's like, well, stop, and just baby steps. So thank you so much, Lucy, for coming on the podcast. Thank you to everybody who's listened to this one. I really, really hope you have enjoyed it. For anyone who wants any more information with regards to my services, then please hop over to the website, Lisa Talbot. You will be met at the moment with the pop-up window all about the midlife style retreat, which is happening in May of this year, which is going to be super, super exciting. So thank you to everyone that listened, and I will see you all next week. Bye-bye. Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you.